Welcome to Midlife Reclaimed, the podcast for women ready to navigate midlife with more clarity, compassion, and energy. I'm Shannon Swales, psychologist, writer, doggy mama, and midlife woman walking this path alongside you. Twice a month, we explore real stories, expert insights, and practical tools to help you move through chronic stress, overwhelm, and burnout so you can reclaim your voice, your boundaries, and your joy. Please remember what you hear here is general information, not a substitute for personal therapy. This isn't about midlife crisis, it's about midlife reclamation. So let's begin. Hi, and welcome to Midlife Reclaim podcast. Or if this is your first time, or if you're a returning listener, watcher, thank you. Welcome. It's wonderful to have you here. I am Shannon Swales, the host. I'm also a psychologist, author, speaker on all things burnout, midlife for women. And today's topic in this solo episode is one that is personal to my midlife burnout experience, but not personal in the sense that there is other people like myself who have this same thing that comes up, and that is the questioning around our career. Is this what I still want to be doing? And often this question comes up in the depths of burnout, and that can make things quite tricky because is this the burnout speaking and I'm just wanting relief from this workload and work type, or even the organization or industry culture? Or is it something that I truly want, that is a meaningful move to me, for you, and in my case for me? So that's what I want to chat with you about today, because I'm sure there's people tuning in that are finding themselves having this question. So this episode is for you. So grab your cup of tea. I have mine, a berry Twinings, berry infused flavor, apparently good for your immune system. Tea in front, or whatever you're doing. Please just, take some comfort, and let's get into things. So before we continue this conversation, I have some exciting news to share with you. Midlife Reclaimed has been nominated in this year's Women in Podcasting Awards, a global initiative to help raise the voices of women in podcasting. So if this episode or another, or this podcast has supported you in some shape or form over the 5 years that it has been in existence, I would really appreciate your vote. I will be leaving the voting link in the show notes, so make sure before you finish this episode or after you finish this episode to vote for Midlife Reclaimed. It will not only really make me smile, but also help get Midlife Reclaimed out to those who could benefit greatly from listening. So thank you in advance for your vote. And of course, thank you for continuing to follow, subscribe, like, or just enjoy an episode or two. Thank you so much for being here. Take care of you. So first, I want to talk about why this conversation matters. I've started to allude to it in the introduction, but it matters on so many more levels. For me, and I'm sure for some of you out there, your career is something that is aligned with your identity, maybe even your sense of self-worth, maybe your sense of purpose and meaning in the world. It might be tied to a lot of those things, and maybe some other things that I haven't mentioned, that does fuel our well-being. So it, is very tricky when this question comes up. Is this what I'm meant to be doing? And for me personally, and I'm sure for a lot of people out there as well, work was the only, my career, my work was the only source of identity and worth back then. So to have this question come up wasn't just that, it was also, who the hell am I if I'm not a psychologist? So there can be quite a lot of challenges with this question just appearing, depending on where you're at and what your career and work means to you, and what else is going on in your life where you get your sense of purpose or meaning or identity or worth. For me, there was nothing else. It was all the eggs in one basket, which was obviously, in hindsight, catastrophic and is certainly something I have worked away from since. And yeah, but anyway, I digress. It is a really important conversation. And also, burnout itself, when we're chronically stressed and we're having questions come up like this in that not see, this is where perimenopause and word retrieval is hard, so it's happening live. I know women out there will understand this, who are going through it. But what I'm saying, like, when our bodies and minds and souls are so chronically stressed, we're skewed to look at the negatives. So we might be seeing something that doesn't actually exist, like our wanting to move away from our careers permanently may be more of a knee-jerk reaction to the stress that is coming from the work, rather than it being that this is work I no longer find fits for me. So that's the other reason why this conversation matters, because if we make a decision whilst in that burnout and it's more for that relief, that could be potentially catastrophic for the future of our career. So, yeah, another reason why this conversation matters. Now, the interesting thing about burnout, that just adds to the complication of this discussion, and for the person trying to figure this out, is that burnout can occur as a result of a misalignment between the career, the work that we're doing, and what we find meaningful or purposeful or, of value in this time of our life, which can change. We can be like in our 20s and 30s or whatever age group in our career and it being really aligned. And then that can start to shift and change because we go through shifts and changes as well. So burnout itself can be a signal that this career no longer fits. However, burnout can also be where there's a distribution issue, meaning the demands on us through our roles and responsibilities, paid or non-paid positions, is above what resources we have to meet that demand, which is the one that we commonly hear about, that, with burnout. Uh, but burnout that is caused by that role distribution issue is where that question might be coming up, but it's not that question of wanting to change our careers, but more out of relief from the burnout rather than that being the cause of the burnout. Now, I'm going to repeat that because in case that didn't land. So we can burn out for many reasons. The most common one that we know about and hear about is that the workload is higher than the resources we have to meet it, and that gap remains for a long time, and we can become chronically stressed. And yes, people can question their careers within that, but it's more of a potentially a knee-jerk reaction to that stress and wanting relief rather than it being about this career no longer fits. But we can also experience burnout as when there is a misalignment with the work that we're doing. It no longer actually fits, and we can start to feel disconnected, maybe cynical, which are characteristics of burnout. So this is where it's a little bit tricky, but hopefully that information might help you to explore your burnout as well. And it always pays to certainly speak to a professional experienced and knowledgeable in burnout to be able to work out those nuances of your burnout experience, but at least getting the knowledge from me. So hopefully that's landed a little bit better. I want to talk a little bit more to that urge to escape because, oh my God, did I have that in spades. And I know it's a really common, I was just speaking to someone today where they're experiencing it. It's just this very much ex again, word retrieval, experience that we have when we're burnt out, and that urge to escape, where we have minds that are geared towards safety, protection. If it sees a threat, it wants to protect us, and this threat brain is always on. And the threat itself can be that the demands are too high. I need relief. I need to get rid of something so I can meet that. With the resource level that I have, I can meet that demand. So I need to get rid of some of that demand, and that can be work. That can be looking at resigning. And this urge to escape is quite natural, considering how we are wired. And I hear time and time again, like I just want to quit, or I really would love to, instead of being a psychologist, I'd rather be a florist. That was mine. Or it was either florist or a barista. And funny enough, in the first month or two that I was out of work and unable to work, I did go and do a barista course, but I didn't become a barista. Probably a good thing. But it's this urge to escape. And what I understand now from my burnout, that was a looking for relief. It wasn't looking for career change, it was looking for relief. And there was part of me that knew that back then as well. So, yeah, that urge to escape, like I said, our minds are looking for ways out, and that is an understandable way out. It may not be something accessible or doable at the time. But that's very natural for the brain looking at that. And in some ways, like that's quite wise of the brain to do, because she is trying to lower the demands to meet the resources that you have, which have lowered because of that chronic stress that's been happening, because of that, gap that's been constant, that it's trying to lower the demands to be able to meet those resources. So, hey, get rid of work or find work that is less stressful and we'll be able to meet that demand or that, yeah. So it makes complete sense. I want to also talk about here, like I didn't just have that urge to escape before I completely burnt out. And what I mean by that, that I could no longer work. So it reached that level. I was trying to pivot my work type. So I was working as a clinical psychologist in private practice, seeing clients individually, and working 4 days a week front with clients, about 6 clients a day, and then 1 day of full admin, which is very common and sort of average for your private practice clinical psych. And I did some group work in addition to that. Yeah, so there was that. And I was recognizing with the help of my supervisor that this work was no longer satisfying, that I needed to still, like I still liked the individual work, but moving towards more of work types that were more aligned with what interests me and I find meaningful. And we were exploring together what that is, but also applying for jobs that fit that alignment more. So there was that recognizing in sort of my moderate burnt out state that there was a there was a misalignment happening with the work type that I was doing, not the career itself, but the type of work I was doing within the career and needing to shift and change it. The tricky thing was that I was already, I would say, quite moderately burnt out. So the energy to do that was very minimal. The support that I received was fundamental, and I think that is worth, taking on yourself as well, having someone, a trusted other, to talk this through and work through this together can be really useful. And that was someone in the industry itself, so could help me with that pivoting and working out what that would look like and the skills to help me connect with what I found of value. And interesting enough, in the burnout research, support by a peer and someone who, trained supervisor is found to be quite a protective factor to help prevent burnout, but also to help when in it as well. I also want to talk about, and this is a bit tricky because, I think we all hear, or you may have heard, well, this may be the first time, that don't make big decisions when you're stressed, which is easy to say. But when you're in it, you're in it, right? And sometimes people I've worked with have had to make really big decisions whilst really chronically stressed. So sometimes there's no way around it. But it is worth just holding space that that making big decisions while under chronic stress, it can be potentially not so great for us. And it's because of what I mentioned earlier, that tricky brain, that it could be our brain looking for that relief from the threat, the stress. So it could be like, oh, we just have to quit our job, or we just, need to go become a barista or something like that. It might be, totally circumnavigating that more meaningful connection, trying to figure out what is actually, what lifts me up, what is my purpose here, what is my meaning here, what's my connection to this work, and working that out, but instead more of that relief. So that's, I suppose, whilst we might need to make some big decisions whilst under chronic stress burnout, and that's the reality some of us face, we can still do it with that awareness of the tricky brain and doing our best to be able to separate from this. What's this about? And I'm going to go into how we can work with that in a second. One of the ideal things, if we can do the ideal, is to give ourselves space first. If we're having these big questions come up, this big question, I don't think this career is for me anymore, and we are in that thick of burnout, that it is ideal to be able to create some space around that question and not act on it in a rush. Now, that space could be taking time away from work, getting some space from that if that's possible, taking some leave if you've got holiday leave, taking that if you have the means to, taking non-paid leave. If you're in that financial position to be able to do that, and I'm very mindful that is not everyone's position, so that might not be. Space could look like journaling this out, actually creating some space at home or at some point to journal your thoughts and feelings and around this question. I'm a bit of a journalist, so that's well, since burning out, I'm a bit of a journalist, so that's a way in which I tend to do things. But it's like talking it out with yourself, just really exploring and reflecting on that question really openly, which can be really helpful and supportive with any insights that might come from that. It can also be talking it out with a trusted other. This could be a partner, a good friend. It could be a supervisor, a peer. It could be a coach, a psychologist, people who are in the know and well trained in this area. So it's creating space to have this conversation and not act on it, if possible, impulsively, to actually really sit and explore this. Because this question is important. What's going on here? What's this about for me? So finding some way, and it might be some of those methods, or it might be something that I haven't mentioned that creates space for you. Could also be what popped into my head there, meditation. And that can actually be a helpful adjunct to exploring this question too, because sometimes to create some space, we first need to center and ground, and meditation can be certainly a helpful way into that way of being. Because when we're more centered and grounded, we're more open to ideas and reflect. And that tricky, negative, narrow brain, that threat brain, is less on then, and we're more in a more connected, grounded space, which helps open our thinking mind more. So meditation can be really great to help create some space internally to do those other things like reflecting through journaling, talking to a friend about it, really just helping us get out of that rush of that threat system and more, or avoidance, because sometimes we're just avoiding the topic altogether, but getting really centered and grounded to look into it. Doesn't have to be meditation though, whatever helps you feel grounded, centered. For some people, it might be going for a walk. It might be talking to that friend, just even, or it might even be journaling. They just feel that they become more grounded through that. But just keep that in mind. And there might be a certain time of day where you find that you're a bit more centered. For me, it's the morning before the noises start. So, it's usually still dark and I sit outside on my porch, and that's where I can do a lot more open reflection. But yeah, and it also can be those spaces with, a professional who's able to provide, that groundedness and connection so you can explore that more openly. I'm just going to pause here for a moment to share something with you. If you'd like to keep up to date with what I'm working on in the world of midlife and burnout, I invite you to join my mailing list. It's where I share updates on the resources, events, and services I offer to help you navigate midlife stress, overwhelm, and burnout with more ease and clarity. As a thank you, you'll receive my free guided journal, Journaling as a Way Back to Yourself, a gentle, at your own pace, reflective practice to slow down, listen inward, and reconnect with what matters most. You'll also get a couple of extra resources to support you in your inbox after your journal arrives. You can sign up via the link in the show notes or at shannonaswales.com/subscribe. So now back to the episode. So talking about, creating some space to explore this question, not act on it, straight away, but to explore it, whether you're still working or not. Creating space to explore this. And in that space, one of the things to help decipher what I was talking about earlier, is this about your connection to your work, your career? Is it no longer a good fit? Or is this more of that burnout stress that's looking for relief? A really great way when you've created that space is to tune into your values. And you've probably heard me talk about values before, but just in case you haven't, values are the qualities of the actions in which we take. So those actions you take, the things that you do for your work, the qualities of those actions, what you stand for, what is rich and meaningful about that role for you and those particular things you do in that role and in that industry. So really stripping it down into the sort of core elements that really infuse the quality of your, or even maybe your intentions, in the work that you do. And I remember doing this for myself. Now, this was for me in the space of being away from my career. I got so unwell that I couldn't pivot, or I couldn't work this out while still under that amount of stress. So I left. And so I had space, but the space looked like not working. And it took a while because I was quite unwell. But eventually, in that space of being away from the stressor and in my journaling and being a fair way into recovery, I was able to entertain the this thought about, is this career still for me? Because before that, I was like, this career is over, it's done. I was that burnt out. I just thought, no, I'm not going back. But in recovery, I was like, hang on here. I think there's something. I just want to give space to that question. And in giving it space, I explored the values, which I had never done with, even when I came into psychology. I didn't actually really look at what is meaningful about this for me, and for me, like, not what you do for others, which could be meaningful for you too, but like what's rich and meaningful about this for me. And I get this technique, or this way, comes from acceptance and commitment therapy, or that's where I got it from. So I used a lot of the ACT exercises on values to explore that. But really, the big question was that helped me tap into it is, when it all comes down to it, that, when you're sitting with that client, what is meaningful about that for you? And the values that came up for me was community. I have them written over here: wisdom, uh, authenticity, and compassion. So these were the qualities that whatever action I was taking in my role was what I was infusing with. So community was an interesting one that came up because I could really see the misalignment with doing one-on-one work, where I didn't get that sense of community with the clients, which I did get whenever I did group work. And I really found that really inspiring, that work. I really went away from that work fulfilled. And so that I was aligned with community because I really got to see how a group of people came together and worked together to help each other out with me guiding and facilitating. It was really beautiful. So that's a sign that we're aligned when we feel invigorated and yeah, just inspired in awe, whatever it might be, joyous. I mean, it has its moments, but and it can get tough, but there's this general overall good feeling. So how I used to do psychology was not very community centered. And also, in terms of my peers, because of private practice, whilst I was working amongst other psychologists, we never got to connect because we all had different schedules. So there wasn't a community in terms of psychologists that I could tap into and just be with, and so on a regular kind of routine basis. So that's something that coming back into the career I've definitely made sure of, even though I do one-on-one work again, but I also do group work, that making sure that I have a community around me and who they are. So yeah, community was a big one. Wisdom, interesting enough, when I explore back, I got the chance to act on that. Wisdom to me is the sharing of the knowledge and skills that I have and the learning from others. But that was askew too. I won't go into that because, but that was askew. There was a misalignment there. And, compassion was there, but it was misaligned as well, like that wasn't flowing back into me. That often I was so focused on the care of others and giving so much that I blurred the boundaries of that giving back to myself. So in my recovery and return to the industry, it was really working on making sure actions I took were compassionate towards me as well. And that last one, authenticity, being true to myself, I suppose, and what I see or who I see as me as a psychologist, and not trying to fit into what I thought a psychologist should be. So that was very misaligned as well. I was more trying to be the person I thought others needed of me rather than who I am. So hopefully that example shows how values can be an important exploration to explore, well, what are my core values when it comes to this work? And are they aligned, with this work and the type of work that I'm doing within this industry? Or are they aligned with this industry at all? So this is a really important way to explore when you have that space, you've made that space to reflect in that way, to see where those areas of need might be, and start taking action to repair that. And it might be through that you've, like myself, find that there are misalignments, that the industry is for you, but not in the way that you have been working. Or it might be finding out that actually, you know what, this industry is not for me anymore. One of the people I interviewed on the podcast way back, I can't remember his name at the moment, but he was an accountant and he shifted in his burnout recovery and exploring what was really truly meaningful to him. He's moved into coaching and doing really well, but more than anything, really aligned with himself and what he wants to do for a living, and hence doing really well because his well-being is skyrocketing as a result, whereas accountancy no longer fit for him. So it can be a complete change. So yeah, values can be a really great way to reflect on that, but we need that space to be able to reflect on that. So approaching this question is really important. Being aware of our tricky brains, and this might be the burnout just wanting relief, but that still entertain this question, really explore it, maybe from this value perspective, and definitely speak out to others. There are people that will be having very similar experiences to you or have been there before, especially in your industry. So, or with a psychologist like myself, to talk this through with as well, or a good friend or a partner. I think it's really important to not rush this. I remember this wasn't one session of reflecting, that I kept this question when I was ready to entertain it, because I wasn't ready for a long time to even entertain being a psychologist again. But that, when I was ready or felt ready to entertain the question, it was a lot of sittings to explore that. And it was also a bit of experimentation as well. Like one of the things whilst I was in recovery, that I felt able to do, as a psychologist, but not working as a psychologist, was teaching. And I was willing to explore that and was able to find a part-time position because I wasn't well enough for full-time, and exploring that and experimenting with that. Because it was something that I felt was value aligned and was something I'd thought about doing. But as I was doing it, recognized that it wasn't quite the right fit. It was that wisdom sharing, but yeah, it wasn't quite the right fit, wasn't aligned with some other things. So I moved on from there. But even so, when I came back into doing some one-on-one clinical work, I actually started off with group work because that was more aligned with my values, a sense of community. So even when I started back in the, sort of similar to what I'd been doing before, I was doing so from more of a value perspective, and also taking the lead with not to rush, not to have all the answers, and to really experiment with this, and that I could pivot if I need to. Like, I'll try this out, but if this is not a good enough fit, or I'm not feeling it, see what I can tweak or do differently. Sometimes it might be the hours you're doing, but the type of work as well. So it is important to, I suppose, not get caught up in that black and white. This has to fit. This has to be the answer. Because sometimes it's not till we're doing something that we can kind of see if this is a good fit or not. So our threat system will want us to rush and to fix and to solve, but we need to more stay connected with ourselves, know what those values are, try things out, experiment, move in that direction tentatively, but pull back if we can. And of course, I'm saying all this knowing but sometimes we don't have that luxury, and that's okay. Sometimes we, might have to go full on into something because we need the finance or whatever. But like, we can still take those moments, those spaces where possible, to check in, so it might look differently, but we can still create some space to explore and check in, and still know and have the intent that this is an experiment to see. And yeah. Well, I'm hoping that exploration of this big question, is this the right career for me, and how burnout plays into that, or can play into that, and ways to explore that yourself out there, and my infusion of my own experience, just to give some, I don't know, tangibility to the discussion, has given some food for thought for you out there. And I'm always eager to hear from the listeners, the people watching on YouTube, about how you found the episode as well. And of course, if you're wanting to delve deeper into the topic and discussions with me, head on over to my Midlife Reclaimed community, where midlife women meet, and they certainly can tap into more questions and answers from me around the podcast, which they get early as well. So, feel free to do that. But please leave a comment on how this landed for you, and any future topics you'd love to explore in this realm of burnout, midlife. Women always love to hear your ideas as well. But thank you so much for listening, watching, and make sure you leave a review. I really appreciate it. But take care of you. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to Midlife Reclaimed. I hope today's conversation has reminded you that you are not alone, and that change is possible even in the busiest seasons of life. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, rate, or review the podcast, and share it with another midlife woman who might need it. For more resources on navigating midlife stress, overwhelm, and burnout, along with reflective writing prompts and community connection, visit shannonaswales.com. You can also watch full episodes on YouTube at Midlife Reclaimed. Remember, you have permission to slow down, to rest, and to reclaim what matters most. See you again soon.